Thanks for inviting me here and allowing you to tell a story. This is definitely probably the highest presentation I've done. It's pretty stunning, actually. So what we're going to talk about today is really, first we're going to tell you about our journey from where we came from, what challenges we faced at Roche, especially in the analytics space, and how we managed the journey up until now. It's been about a year and a half, maybe a 2-year journey in total up until now. And then we're going to show you a little bit about what Immuta brings to our party, why we thought Immuta could really accelerate our journey, especially when it comes to data mesh and decentralization and ownership. And then Claude here is going to do the exciting part. He's going to do the cool stuff. Yeah, he's going to show you some real-life examples of things that have really helped us, especially in the operational excellence type of space. So things like automation, things like policy as code, and actually dynamically assigning policies at run times of pipelines. So this is really cool stuff that Claude and the team have been working on, and he's been pushing Steve and his product team at Immuta to really help us accelerate this journey. So maybe we just start quickly. Those of you who don't know Roche, most of you probably do. This is one of the world's, I think it's actually the world's largest biotech company at the moment. 125 years history. We just had a nice birthday party last year, and quite a few employees all over the world. So, and that's the head office in Basel. That third tower is not built yet. At the back, you see it's just been granted planning permission, I hear. So that will be the final. But the 2 towers are there. Quickly, let's talk about when I started getting involved in. I was leading actually the Accenture partnership at the time, two years ago when I started at Roche, and they brought us in really to try and help them with this legacy infrastructure, as Mo discussed. Most of it was on-premise. They had lots of disparate monolithic type of platforms, SQL servers, Oracle, etc., etc. Usually owned and maintained by centralized IT teams. Some of them still exist. Clearly, we're trying to kill them off as quickly as possible. But this brings with it a number of problems. You probably are familiar, and it probably resonates with you. A central IT team comes with it, a huge backlog. It comes with it bottlenecks. It comes with it slow release cycles, if they're huge engineering pipelines. And it's usually split up into this kind of 3-tier type of teams in architecture, traditional. So you have your ingestion team, you have your data modeling team that's doing all your modeling, you have these teams that are looking after data marts, ready for reporting and data science, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is not any more unusual than any other company here. So, we decided that this really needs to change, and some of the problems you saw there, we were looking at ways how we could improve this. And this is a great quote by Albert Einstein that my boss, he loves this quote. So I thought I'd throw it in there just to pay homage to him. And this is in reality, we were actually thinking about, 2 years ago, well, let's just move everything to the cloud. It'll be faster, it'll scale better, we'll have unlimited storage, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly, it's still going to have the same problems that we discussed in the previous slide. It's still going to have a huge backlog. It's still going to have a centralized team. It's still going to have bottlenecks. It's still going to have these slow release cycles. Just because we move it to cloud doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So about, like I said, 18 months, 2 years ago, myself, my boss, a few others, we sat down and we thought of ways what we could do. And in that time, Zhamak had just kind of written our first blog on data mesh. The book wasn't out yet, but she had some thoughts. It was released there. I think she posted it on LinkedIn first of all, and then a few other blogs there. And it was talking about this decentralization, this domain ownership, moving away from the centralized monolithic data platform team or IT team. And, we were thinking about, actually, well, Roche in itself actually is quite advanced when it comes to analytics, and there's quite a large maturity in the domains themselves, in the business units. And, we probably know it as kind of shadow IT organizations in IT. We refer to them as that. Actually, we're thinking, this is maybe a good thing. We should be enabling these shadow IT organizations and not trying to shut them down. And, this is really started to fit, because these guys actually did a very good job. Yeah, probably better than IT at the time in Roche. And then we started to think, well, how can we do this, And we can't do this from IT alone. I mean, this is clear, and people are now realizing that, because they're actually trying to drive it from IT. I mean, we're speaking to organizations in Switzerland and all over that are really trying to drive this from IT, and they're wondering why it's failing. You cannot do this from IT. So we started to speak to the business and ask them if they wanted to work as one partnership, one team, to really move this forward at an organizational level. And then Claude will speak a little bit about the different structures from the past to now. And this was key, is really to get that buy-in from the business organization. So we started with maybe one or two domains: manufacturing, I think quality and regulatory domain, and we worked with them on high-value use cases that we could bring as one or two starters to the data mesh journey. We're not trying to rebuild a data warehouse. We're not trying to build a data lake or anything like that. We want high-value use cases with business value that we can bring and we can adopt and implement as data products. And this is what we started, and we went on this journey. And I'll just kind of give you a brief summary. All those of you, probably have read the book, are familiar with the concepts and the principles. Just the summary line there at the top, in its core, it's founded in decentralization and distribution of responsibility. This means that it really, one of its principles is ownership and domain ownership, moving away from this central IT ownership that owns the code, the pipelines, the governance, etc., to actually distributing it to the domains. Yep, and you are the owner of this. We will support you, as IT, but as a cross-functional team, we're in this together. And the 4 principles, I'll just cover them quickly. As I talked about the domain ownership, it's really important. The actual product is a data as a product. Yeah, the product means not just the data, but everything around it: the code, the versioning, the metadata, the lineage, the structure, the artifacts, the governance, the policies. This is a product. Yep, it's not just about the data. Clearly, the data is, very key in a data product, but it's not just about that. Yeah, you need to have certain characteristics. And in Roche, we really go to town on this. We say, actually, you need to prove to us as a data product owner that you've met all these characteristics. And this is, and Claude will show you, a bit about that later. And this is key. Tools like Immuta and our other tools in our ecosystem really help us, allow our developers and our data product owners to meet all these characteristics. We have our self-service data platform, which I'll kind of leave at the moment. I mean, obviously, Immuta as a capability is part of our self-service data platform, but we could talk for hours and hours and hours about our platform. The data governance part is, and the federated computational governance is really key, because, before we used to think of it, certainly in Roche, as kind of rule with authority, yeah, scare tactics, yeah. If you do not enforce these policies, you will go to jail, or there will be a data breach, etc., etc. Now, yes, some of those policies are driven by legal constraints, and we have to be very careful. But a lot of the governance can actually be federated down to the domain level and put in the hands, I think Mo mentioned it, put in the hands of the data owners, the data product owners, the people who understand who needs to see which data and who needs to see different slices and different views of the data. So we needed a tool to be able to help us accelerate this journey. And we started off looking at capabilities of what we needed to offer to allow our domain teams to be able to own their data products, to be able to build their data products, to be able to manage their data products. And you can see one of these key capabilities is round about data security and access control. And this is where we really needed help here. Yeah, previously in our old world, in our monolithic warehouses, lakes, etc., we had, huge, I would call them policies, but essentially they were massive where statements with entitlement tables, that said every time someone accesses this, it will kick off a where statement, sometimes cached, sometimes not, to say if it's in this RADA group or if it's in this LDAP group, it can see that. If it's in this group, it can see that. That was, something that we really identified as, well, people were talking more about attribute level access control now and not just role based. Maybe we should start looking at that. And we identified very early on that a tool like Immuta could really help us with this journey. And here it is here. This is the whole data as a product. And Immuta, we spoke to for about, 2 years now, I think. I mean, a year in production's probably been right, Claude. But early on, we spent, and Simeon's was getting grayer and grayer and more stressed and more stressed when that year was going on, when we really left no stone unturned. The POC was, we need to try this, and we had a list of 100 things we need to try out. And, thankfully we're there now. We're absolutely delighted with the relationship and with the influence we can have on the product as well. But, you look at the two headlines, and this is how we look at it. We look at it data access control, and this is operational efficiencies. We think of this as data access control, and Claude's going to talk a little bit more about this. And then the security part, obviously, we talk about the risk mitigation. So, I think that Mo showed a slide with the split into the three, or maybe it was Stuart that showed the slide earlier on this morning. But really, we're aligned with their thinking as a product, this risk mitigation, operational efficiencies, and these are the two things that we really, consider Immuta to be able to accelerate our journey. So I'm going to leave Claude for the exciting part. He's going to show you exactly, how we've used Immuta in the last year and how we're gaining maximum benefits from it. So, Claude, over to you.
Thank you very much. Wow, now I got the expectations to live up to, So, let me see, here we go. So, I'm going to talk to you today about our practical use case of scaling data access and security, But before we go there, let me try to put a bit more context on what Paul was saying, right? So, data mesh, decentralization, what does it mean from an organizational standpoint? This is how we were working pre-data mesh, That means one central IT team essentially split in two functions, one side development, the other one application maintenance, serving the different parts of the different BI teams, as typically management reporting, and having kind of a data science team on the side. And what we moved to is an organization like this, a common platform with data product teams sitting directly in the business in a decentralized fashion, organized into domains which have governance, and then coming together at a cross-domain governance board at an enterprise level. And let me just say a word or two why this works so well for Roche. Because Roche, with its many manufacturing sites across the world creating instruments and drugs, they, as a business, is already very decentralized. Actually, only few people sit in the headquarters in Basel. Most of the data scientists, business analysts, they work on a site. So, and that's why when Paul and Omar, his boss, right, when they decided to kind of move into the data mesh, it just made sense. Because for years before that, we tried to serve a decentralized business organization through a central IT, and we just realized it doesn't work. We got to change this, and we essentially got to adjust the way we work with data to how the business works as well. If we translate this into an architectural pattern, so you can see here on the left side, this is the traditional approach that we had. So collect all the data sources into one centralized database and store it in a central data warehouse or a data lake, and then give it to the different consumers. And the role split was, in a sense, simple. You had the split among build, so developers, operate, maintenance, like I mentioned before, and consumption. And since it was a centralized IT team, pretty much you would have a bunch of roles, and people have either all access or not. Yeah, so kind of one size fits all roles. And when we then said, look, so we're going to, start these cross-functional teams between IT and business, we also got to adjust our architecture. Yeah, it's like, it's not enough to just do it on slides. And that kind of 2 years ago, I mean, when we started, that's all data mesh was. It was on slides. Yeah, no one had actually, gone all the way and physically built it. There was no instructions. Yeah, this is how you do it. And I'm quite proud to say we as Roche were ones of first, or we were lucky to actually get the permission from our management that we can go and try this. And then, so the suggested architecture that we have now also implemented is essentially what you can see on the right. So it's also on the infrastructure side, we do a setup per domain/team. Yeah. So that means each domain has works like a spoke, yeah, like in a hub and spoke model. Each domain being its own spoke. So what does that mean in terms of access? Yeah. So the roles split. We still have the concept to some extent of develop, maintain, and consume, but it's now on a per domain level because of these decentralized data teams. And this, of course, also makes access requirements, and I'm not trying to say that in the old world we were doing things actually right. I think we were not, but this makes access requirements a lot more complex. So Paul kind of then gave me this riddle, yeah, and said, suggest to me a pattern on how we should essentially build access in this decentralized model. And we came up with a very simple model, 3 roles, domain admin, being essentially the most powerful role, yeah, being able to pretty much do everything within the context of that domain. That's, for example, the pipeline that would be used by our CI/CD pipeline, yeah, that needs to have permission to do writes, to do creates on the productive system. Then we would have a domain developer, which is also, if you will, a back-end role. So the domain developer, they would have elevated permissions on the development environment to build new features, test out new features, and they would have a read-only access to test and production. And then comes the reporting role essentially being the role for the consumer. Yeah? So read-only access to production. Now, some of you might already probably have a feeling how this went. So we started, yeah, and it didn't take a week or 2, and we were flooded with requests for customized roles, specifically for reporting. Yeah, I need a role for people to only see the US data. I need a role just for the sales and the material table. I need a role where one column is masked. And it went on and on and on. And you can basically see at the bottom left, so what it resulted is an exponential growth in terms of these reporting roles. We had to create lots and lots of customized reporting roles. And each time we create such a role, we had to create an Active Directory group. We had to sync it with the 3 identity access management tools in Roche, which is manual process, takes 7 days. We then had to inform the users that the role was ready. We had to describe the roles, and that made it extremely complicated because you just had this flood of roles. Nobody really understood anymore what to request. And we actually had our support team, we had to increase our support team just to handle all these requirements for these customized roles. And you can see within no time we were up to something like 400 roles that we had to maintain for round about 8 to 10 domains. Yeah, so you can see it's a massive problem, and we kind of tried to be honest with ourselves, yeah, and then Paul and I sat together and we said, it's not going to work. Yeah, if we truly want to scale, we need to do something about it. Yeah. And Paul then took this and said, we got Immuta. Why don't we ask them how they would approach this? And he talked to Steve, so the CTO of Immuta, and we kind of had a good timing because this was exactly round about the moment when Immuta brought out its table grants subscription policy feature. So how does that feature work? So you can see it here on the left from you. So in Immuta we got 3 pieces. We got data sources on the left side, we got the subscription policy in the middle, and we got users on the other end. Essentially like a mathematical equation. Yeah? And the way that this works is if you can put tags on data sources, and you could put attributes on users, and if the attribute on the user matches the tag on the data source, that's when you get access. To say it a bit more metaphorically, imagine a door in front of the data source. It has a lock, and you got to put in a combination of numbers, of 4 numbers. If you know that combination, you get in. If you don't know the combination, you stay out. Very, very simple. And the key difference here is really attribute on the user, not part of a role. It's attribute on the user. And also, even in Immuta itself, and you can see this on the other side, this is actually a fairly simple thing to set up. It takes probably 3 minutes, if not even less. Yeah? And now the question is, well, job done, good, problem solved, all great. Yeah? Not quite. Now you might be asking, so how do the tags get on the data sources, and how does the attribute get on the user? What's the process behind that? So let's have a look, and it gets a bit more technical here and a bit more architecty, but yeah, stick with me. So we got 2 personas in this journey. We got the developer on the one hand side, and we got the consumer on the other side. And they each do actions and got a responsibility in this. Let's start with the developer. So the developer, as part of their CI/CD process, so CI/CD being continuous integration, continuous development, so as part of the development, they create a file which is called the OEM.yaml file. And essentially this file holds the metadata for the data product they are going to release. So it'll have something like an ID, in this case, wandering sales, an owner, Paul, actually a bad example because Paul doesn't own a single data product in Roche. A description, and now important, the objects that belong to this data product. And here very important is, so you can only put objects from your own domain, right? Because this is obviously important from a security perspective. I can't just put any object and this will create an access. It's always restricted to your own domain. What you then do is you run the CI/CD pipeline with this file, and it does multiple things, API-based architecture. First, it goes to the database, and it actually tags the object that you have listed with the ID. In reality, we're using a technical ID, but I used here a name to make it a bit more tangible, the concept. So, wandering sales, yeah? So, the 3 tables, sales, countries, and orgs, will be tagged with wandering sales. Then, there's a second API call, which actually takes these data sources and puts them into Immuta, telling Immuta you are going to manage access to these objects. And last but not least, there's another API call to our data marketplace, the Roche Data Marketplace, where again, we publish this information, which makes it visible and ready to be requested by consumers. So, let's look at the other side of things. So it's a bit small. I hope you can see it though, but on the left what you have is a screenshot of what the data product these days looks like in our data marketplace. Yeah? So as a consumer, I go to the marketplace, I do my search, yeah? I do my understanding, I do my assessment of these different data products and whether they fit my use. And if in fact they do, there's a small button at the top right. You can see it looks like a basket with a plus. You click on that basket. You can shop for multiple data products. It puts it in your basket, and then you go and check out, yeah, with a business justification. And what then happens is actually, and you see this on the other side, there's another API being triggered, the API for data shopping. And first of all, what it will do is it will go and ask permission of the owner of that data product. Yeah, so clearly we need an approval process. There's no free-for-all data products. We do sometimes get the requirement, like people saying, well, we have data, we just want to be accessible to all, but the large majority of use cases, you do need an approval, and typically the people accountable for that data actually want to have control in terms who they grant access to or not. Now, in case that approval is given, the API call goes then on to Immuta and actually puts the attribute on the user. So if I have requested this data product, the wandering sales, it will take wandering sales and attach it as an attribute to my user. And that's the moment where the equation is fulfilled. Remember, right? So if the attribute on the user matches the tag on the data source, that's when I get access. And you can see this in the step 2b. So what Immuta then does, it has the policy engine, and it pushes these permissions down to the database. And as a last step, I am informed as a requester that access has been granted. Or in the negative case, declined, where, of course, in case of a negative response, we will never put the attribute on the user in Immuta, meaning I never get access. So, for those who now say, wow, this was a bit too technical, let me tell you actually, from a business perspective, what the impact was for us. And it's huge, yeah? So actually, the first key achievement that we had with this is we completely eliminated essentially the platform team in the middle. Yeah, so I told you when we had the role-based access model, the roles have to be created by the platform team, by Paul's team. And we got this flood of requests every day or even every week. I told you about the 7 days it takes to synchronize within the Roche Identity Access Management tools. Yeah? Completely eliminated. We got the developer running his or her CI/CD pipeline, and we got the consumer going to the portal and shopping and getting access. There's no middleman anymore. The second achievement is that we managed to reduce all these customized roles, yeah, because it's now fully attribute-based. So for each data product, the development team, they're going to create an OAM file. This creates essentially a new ID for the data product. They push it through, goes to the marketplace, people can shop it. We don't have to create new groups anymore. Yeah, completely eliminated that. And that was actually a reduction of 94% of the groups for us. Yeah. And achievement 3, as a result from that, is that we actually managed to free up capacity of 2 people in our support team, who we now can leverage to work on further automation and making our platform even more self-service. Good, I got 3 minutes left. I think we still got a long program, so good that we're a bit ahead of time. I say thank you very much, and I'm excited to talk to all of you later during the different activities. Thank you so much.